Hello and welcome to HR Unplugged, company culture red flags and what you can do to fix them. Company culture plays a big role in whatever your goals are as an HR team, attracting new hires, enticing top talent, or balancing out a retention issue. In today's episode of HR Unplugged, Anita Grantham and Vanessa Brulot interviewed Julie Turney, founder and CEO at HR at Heart Consulting, to discuss serious signs of a bad company culture and what you can do to turn it around. Thank you for tuning in. Today's episode is brought to you by BambooHR, the complete HR software. Simplify HR with award-winning solutions for everything from hire to retire with BambooHR.
Hi there, I'm BambooHR. Yes, the actual software.
Mr. Moment, dearie, I'm here too.
Spreadsheets? You're still around? I thought you retired.
Well, don't forget about me.
Who are you?
I'm clunky HR software. I know all, I see all.
So you all do hiring, onboarding, time tracking?
Well, I can try. I'm a trier, that's for sure.
Assuming people don't get lost in my maze of endless clicks or give up waiting for support, you betcha I can do it.
And payroll? Can you do a full payroll without any errors?
Oh, I don't know anything about that, but I can do sums and columns. People love columns.
I can do anything. Sort of, eventually.
Are you user-friendly, fast, accurate, affordable? Do you set entire organizations free to do great work?
Well,
Did I mention rows? I do rows too.
What does user-friendly even mean?
Go ahead. Get a free demo today at BambooHR.com.
Welcome, everyone, to today's episode of HR Unplugged, Company Culture Red Flags and what you can do to fix them. We're so excited to have a returning guest today. Julie Turney is here. It's been so fun. Just if you haven't heard Julie before, she is the founder and CEO of HR at Heart Consulting, and she is at heart. She is full of heart and full of love, and we are so grateful to be spending time with her again today, live and in person from Barbados. She flew all the way to Utah to be with us today. Big online hearts, everybody. We're so excited. So welcome, Julie. For those that haven't heard you before, please introduce yourself to the audience.
Oh, hello, everyone. And thank you so much for having me. I have to say, I love Salt Lake. It's absolutely beautiful here. If you've never been, you have to come. That's a plug for Utah. I hope I get paid for that. I'm just kidding.
We'll contact the governor and the
governor know.
Department of Tourism and let them know.
I'm in a different place. It's absolutely beautiful. But yes, my name is Julie Turney, and I am from the beautiful island of Barbados. I am HR at Heart. I am an HR coach. I support HR professionals who are struggling with burnout, workplace trauma, and career frustration. But I'm an HR professional at heart, and I love HR tech. So all of those things combined, we can have conversations all day, every day.
You sure can.
Oh, yeah.
Well, we are so excited that you're here, Julie, and I'm so excited about the topic that we're going to be discussing today. So let's jump right in. I wanted to talk a bit about how employee happiness has been a roller coaster for several years. Even with a slight rebound in 2024, we still haven't found ourselves close to the happiness levels in the pre-pandemic times. Mm-hmm. So does company culture play into this narrative? And if so, why has it shifted so horribly since before 2020? Anita, what do you think?
Well, let me just level set with some data. And I'm actually really bummed to report that employee happiness continues to hit a new 4-year low. I feel like this is like the 10th quarter that I've reported a new low. And I don't want to be the bearer of bad news. In May of 2024, we hit 35, a significant drop from 44 in May of 2020. While this may seem like a small dip in Q2, all of Q2 2024 have dropped below 36, making it the lowest Q2 ENPS we've ever seen. In addition, there was a 5% decrease from June 2023 to June 2024. And, I'm just curious, is it still a compensation discussion? Is it an inflation discussion as we're here? If we're talking about US-based company, we've had higher inflation. Julie, I'd love your perspective more from a global standpoint on the cost of goods. And if we think that's affecting global EMPS, that would be interesting. And then I still think this path on hybrid versus in office continues to be a weight for most organizations.
Mm-hmm. Yes. Yeah. What are your thoughts, Julie? Like, why do you think we haven't completely come back to the pre-pandemic happiness levels?
because of all the things that Nita just said. And then some. But I do believe that if you think of company culture and the definition of company culture, we're talking about attitudes, behaviors, beliefs of every single individual in the organization. And combined, that's what makes your company culture. Yes, you will have some commonalities, and then in other areas you won't. But clearly there's a misalignment in those behaviors, beliefs, attitudes that has changed significantly, that is impacting the way employees in our organizations are feeling about the company culture. So to your point, if you think about Brexit in the UK, if you think about what's happening with the US economy, if you think about the impact on shipping of goods and moving goods throughout different countries, the freezes, the war in the Ukraine, all of those things have played an integral part on our companies, our company cultures. And so when we talk about the beliefs and the values of people, it has shifted significantly because the world has changed, right? Do we really care about our employees' health? Do we really care about creating safe spaces? Do we care about their mental health and well-being? Because as happiness declines, so does mental health.
Yeah.
And so what are we doing in our organizations to change that? Then I'm going to add an additional spin. Thanks to Sherm. DEI.
Yeah.
And that lack of diversity, equity, and inclusion. If you as an HR body are saying, we're going to take the E out, how do you expect organizations automatically they're going to go, let's shift all of this. We don't need DEI anymore. Now we have government saying, no, we do need DEI. And so when you think and put all of these things into play, they really do impact culture and happiness in its totality. So what can we do to shift becomes a question.
Yeah.
We need to pause and look at where we're at. We were fine going through a pandemic, working hybrid, working fully remote. Now we're telling people to come back, only to not pay enough attention and people have to die at their desks. Because I can't help but think of Wells Fargo and that employee who was at her desk for 4 days before they realized that she was dead. So what are we coming back to work for?
We're still in the space of office space and the stapler in the basement, right? Oh, I didn't know you were still employed here. Mm-hmm. You know, you make me curious about a question, Julie, off book, because that's where we tend to go in these conversations. That's why it's unplugged.
Mm-hmm.
Do you think that employee happiness stems from their personal life and is amplified in their professional life? Do you think the unhappiness starts as the origin? Where's the origin of unhappiness? Is it in the personal setting or in the professional setting?
That's such a great question. I think happiness comes from within.
Yes.
I think that's how we define it, right? We have this innate need to be happy. And so it starts with us. But if the things that are extrinsic to us are not connected with what's making us happy within, then this is where we have all of those problems, right? So if I don't have a good job and I'm not making that much money and I have ill parents, ill kids, or I don't have the best housing situation, I'm not in the best relationship, or I'm all alone in this world, then all of those things impact how a person shows up in the world. Let's say in the world in general, before how they show up in the workplace. If we don't have the best family environment, that's going to reflect on how we come into the workplace. So all of these things start from within, start with our families and our cultures in our families, in our communities. And then that extends out into what we bring into the workforce, right? Because every employee is someone's child, first and foremost. So at the end of the day, how we feel about ourselves and what we bring into our spaces is how we show up in the workplace.
You know, I was just listening to this podcast where Elizabeth Gilbert was the guest. Are you familiar with her? She's an author. She wrote Eat, Pray, Love.
Yes.
Fantastic book, right? Mm-hmm. So she talked about that she is single and celibate for like a period of time. I think she said 5 years. And what she's noticed is that when she engages in a relationship, a romantic relationship, she's constantly disappointed by the expectations that aren't met in a relationship. And what she learned through this time of being alone is that all of those thoughts exist in her brain absent a relationship.
Yeah.
But when you have this relationship, you start to look external and you're like, it's because of them that I am unhappy. It's because of this that I am frustrated. When she's alone, she has all those feelings, but she can't look to point at anywhere.
Right.
And so it just made me ask the question, right? Are we pointing at the workplace for unmet expectations that the workplace will never meet because it's the easiest place to point? It's the most time we spend, right, in our lives is inside this workplace. So it's just easier to blame the employer. I wonder.
So that's an interesting perspective. I think it goes twofold, right? So yes, you have to start with you. I think with every conversation, right, you start with yourself and what your brain is telling yourself. I think, what's the story you're telling yourself if we go all Brené Brown for a moment?
Yeah.
What's the story you're telling yourself about yourself? What is it that you are unhappy with? I think Mo Gadot, he wrote the book on
the happiness equation.
The equation.
Yes.
Yes.
So good.
Lessons that he learned from his son.
Yeah.
But really reflect that we need to look within and start thinking about how we deal with ourselves and how we feel about ourselves. So I think the essence of Eat, Pray, Love is like, you need to love yourself, right? We need to nourish ourselves. So how do we what do we feed our brains? Are we feeding our brains good food to get good energy? But then are we also feeding our brains good information that helps us to stay positive, right? And are we looking for friendships and organizations that match our values? So if we don't know ourselves, it's hard then you will have to blame the organization. You will have to blame family and friends because you don't know yourself and you don't know what you want, right? So I think that's solve for that happiness equation. And along with the book Eat, Pray, Love really help us to appreciate that we have to start from within and then work outside, right? Yeah. So until we can do those things, we're going to always blame the company. It's never going to be enough money. It's never going to be the best role. It's never going to be the best boss, right? It's always going to be them. But then the level of accountability that comes from us, again, beliefs, values, behaviors, that's what we bring into the organization. Now imagine passing that down. So think for a moment about, I'm obsessed with Inside Out. Have you watched Inside Out?
Yes.
Okay, and I just watched Inside Out too.
So we've got to talk about this. I won't let my girls watch it.
Really?
Well, I feel like, and challenge me, I haven't seen it. So I just watched the trailer. But I feel like it would create anxiety about a time they have not yet entered. And I really actually want to change the narrative around puberty for women. I think it would change how women show up and turn it into a feeling of ownership. And the way I experienced the trailer was that you have no control. And these things are going to enter your brain. And I almost felt like it'd be a way to point externally to say, well, it's my period or I'm hormonal and I don't control my emotions. I have these little string pullers in my brain that I can't control. So I pulled it off the watch list, but please challenge me on it.
Okay, let me challenge you on it. It's important for especially children to be aware of their feelings, right?
Yeah.
I mean, we always hear parents say, oh, you have big feelings. What does that mean? But I think being aware that these feelings have labels, like you can be happy, you can be sad, and you get the right to own that for yourself. But then how do you want others to experience you when you are sad or when you are mad or when you are scared? How do you want that to come out? And so I think the movie in itself helps to raise that kind of awareness. I will tell you, anxiety did make me aware of my anxiety. And I think being able to see what an anxiety attack looks like from an animated experience really heightened my awareness of what my anxiety attacks actually look like.
Okay.
So I went through this period with my therapist, this exercise with my therapist, where she got me to draw what my fear looks like or what my anxiety looks like. It looked nothing like what Pixar did. They did a really great job, but mine was a lot uglier. But that monster changes for me over time. So we do that exercise maybe every 2 years. Because
Will you describe the exercise a little bit more?
so basically you start with a dot on a piece of paper, and then you take that dot and you start to build it into what animal or monster, the feeling that you have in the moment that you're feeling anxious, what that looks like for you. So the first time I tried the exercise, it looked like a shadow. It looked like a shadow, and it looked like it was overshadowing something else. Now my anxiety monster looks more like Cookie Monster, but not a good one. Cookie Monster.
I'm like, what kind of cookies do we have? The full.
He looks like Cookie Monster, but he's not. But that's because I've trained my mind now to try to find positive ways to deal with my anxiety. So I think of good things or things that make me happy. So right now it looks like Cookie Monster. But it was an evolution that I went through over 6 years of doing that exercise with my therapist. But I wish I'd had Inside Out when I was younger to help me recognize that these emotions and these feelings that I have are totally okay.
Totally normal.
Totally normal. But I need to be conscious of when I'm feeling those things and I'm experiencing other people, how that looks and feels to other people.
Okay.
And not just to me.
Yeah, it helps you see through their lenses. Because I actually related a lot to that movie because I was a new kid. I actually moved to Minnesota as a new kid, and like I went to 9 schools and was a new kid multiple times, obviously. But if I had something like that to understand, when I was feeling that anxiety or when I was getting bullied, it's like, I understand how I was being perceived by my parents when I'd come home. And how I was impacting them while I was trying to deal with my own emotions, not realizing, this is normal.
Yes.
And so that's one thing I appreciated.
Super helpful, yeah. So like, for example, 2 weeks ago, I found a picture on Pinterest with all of the emotions from Inside Out. And I posted it on LinkedIn, and I asked my HR community on LinkedIn, how are you feeling today? And so people started posting, and they were like, I'm a little anxious, or, I'm actually feeling hopeful today. And then people started showing, oh my gosh, I took my kids to watch this movie and I thought it was a great way to help them to learn their emotions. I would say, don't take it off the watch list. You're making a choice for your kids without even giving them an opportunity to choose for themselves, and then say, well, mommy, I didn't like it. And then have a conversation about it. Have a crucial conversation about it. Yeah. And then just say, well, how did this movie make you feel? These emotions are very real, but a lot of times we're not taught how to navigate those emotions. And I find I grew up in the 80s where your parents didn't talk about those things. They were just like, go outside until it gets dark and come back in and eat some food, get a bath and go to bed.
I thought Jack Ryan was going to pick me up at a Porsche for prom. So hasn't happened. Keep dreaming.
That would have been so cool, right? And I was in my 18 era and I was solving crime. Right? So I think it really helps to have these conversations now with our children to help them recognize what those emotions are, why they and what's the root cause behind it. But I say all of that to say, again, we sit in organizations with employees that are somebody's kids.
Yes.
That probably hasn't had the opportunity to talk about those feelings. And so when we talk about creating a company culture that says, we really care about you, we appreciate you, then we need to tap into those pieces, which includes the mental health aspect as well.
Yeah, I love the push. I love the good, crucial conversations,
Live and unplugged. So add it to the watch list. I'll watch it with the girls. I'll report back.
Beautiful.
Yes. Okay. Yes. Well, and I love that you said that because it's like we need to allow individuals to be humans when they come to work. And flipping it back to HR, like we deal with a lot of very difficult things on the day to day. I know we talked about that a lot in the last time you were here, but it made me think of like when we were talking about the Eat, Pray, Love and like cause and effect. Sometimes we point to something like, well, I'm feeling this way because of this. In HR, sometimes we can get into those places of, I just dealt with so many things today and I'm upset because all these people aren't listening to me. I'm not influential. I'm not making a difference. Like, why am I doing this? I see that in Facebook pages with HR folks where like, I'm done. I can't do HR anymore. I'm burnt out because nobody's listening to me. I feel like I'm not making a difference. And sometimes it's like, okay, are we falling into that realm of cause and effect? And are we kind of looking at, okay, why am I reacting this way? This happened to me last week where I was like, I had just a day where I was like, I left and I was just at my I was at my top and I'm like, I can't, I need to walk away. And I started listening to this book. It's The Courage to be Disliked. And I think it's a Japanese philosopher in it, but like, and it talks a lot about the philosophy behind this and that's not really cause and effect. We have to go back to our why. Why are we reacting this way? What's the true reason behind it? And what is within our control? And it makes me think back to that when I can't remember who talked about this, but the remote. We each have our own remote control. And are we handing people our remote controls to just be like, click, you're angry now. Change the channel. Or are we going to completely control our remote? Because we can't control how people respond.
No, but we can't control our environment.
Exactly. And so when you go and look at these companies, when I see these HR folks saying, I'm burnt out, I'm done, I'm going to go somewhere else. What are you looking for there that's going to be different? And what is within your control versus not?
Well, Julie, you can tell us because you get to work inside a lot of different companies. Is this true or not true? All the problems are the same.
False.
Okay.
So the problems are different. And because HR is not the same everywhere. And when I say everywhere, I don't just mean in every organization, but HR is not the same in every country. It's the way people think and feel about HR in Europe versus how they think about HR people in Africa or how they think about HR people in the Caribbean. Similar, but still not the same. So I think we all encounter situations that make us feel like we're alone, but really we're not. But they're still not the same. So, for example, if I think about I have a CEO who doesn't support me, which is what happens with a lot of HR professionals. They go, my CEO would not let me get an HRIS. They always tell me it's not in the budget. I have to work with Excel because the company works off of Microsoft. Or we work off of Google, so we use Google Sheets. Room for so much human error. And also, you're putting so much pressure on yourself to do that work in that one spreadsheet. It drives you crazy. So not being able to have those processes, whereas if I talk to HR professionals in the US, a lot of them have their HRIS, they have their payroll, they have their benefits. When I talk to people in the Caribbean, they don't have that. They don't have an HRIS. What is an HRIS, right? When you talk to people in UK and Europe, they might have some form of HRIS. They have the technology, but others don't. Then there's building teams, right? As the organization grows, can I build my HR team? In most countries in the Caribbean, you're an HR department of 1, maybe 2. Where the organization has grown and recognizes the HR to employee ratio should be somewhat balanced, it's a unicorn in the Caribbean, right? Then you come to the US where there are big HR teams and they're all doing different things, the same thing in Europe. So when you think about all of those things, you could understand why HR is experiencing the pressure that it's experiencing, right? And so the burnout comes, and this is where I say to HR people, which I wish I'd learned a long time ago, people can only do what you allow them to do. If you have a set of values and a belief system that says, when the buck stops here or it stops here, I'm going to do something different, people will behave differently. So now when you start to set your boundaries and go, no, I cannot take a call at 5:00 on Friday. No, I will not step into a meeting at 4:00 on any time of the evening. When you start to set those boundaries for yourself, people start to treat you differently. People start to look at HR differently. And then the other thing that I always tell people is the less accessible you are, the more people want to access you.
Yeah.
And so make yourself less accessible. I have things set in my calendar that whether it's drinking water, going for a walk, eating food, because if I don't do those things, if I can't take care of me, how can I take care of an entire organization? I can't. You can't do it. It's not possible. It's not sustainable. It's not sustainable.
You're teaching people how to treat you.
Yeah.
You're teaching people how to treat you. So you got to make the time to eat, make the time to drink, make the time to go hug a mountain. If you live in Salt Lake, hug one of those beautiful mountains.
She loves our mountains. I love it.
Too, right? Take the time to take care of you, because we plug into people all the time, but we don't plug into ourselves, which brings us back to that happiness effect.
Yeah.
I can't be happy with myself because I'm pleasing so many other people and I have so many other competing things in my life. It's making it harder for me to take care of myself. Then I start to experience compassion fatigue, where I'm just like, let it burn, because I don't care anymore. Let it burn. Let them do whatever they want. I
love this. Did you hear it? Compassion fatigue. Hashtag compassion fatigue.
Yes. Mm-hmm. That inability to care anymore for anything. Not even wanting to have, crucial conversations about anything.
It's a good indicator as we talk about disengagement when you hear people that don't want to engage in the work anymore. Mm-hmm. That is compassion fatigue. That would be a red flag.
Absolutely.
Inside your culture when people are just complicit in the way the culture is.
Yep. Top right out.
Yes. Yes.
Are those part of the company red flags that you can find out?
Yes. Oh, yes.
Okay.
Oh, yes. Could we do company red flags HR edition?
Let's go.
Yes.
Company red flags HR edition. If your company does not allow you to purchase an HRIS, that is a red flag. If they don't have one, it's a red flag. Run away. If your company does not allow you to have opportunities to develop and learn, if you as HR do not have a budget, if you don't know what that is up front and you have to fight too hard to just get one dictionary. I'm saying a dictionary. I had a client who said that they couldn't even get a dictionary. The person said, Google, use Google. What do you want a dictionary for? That's a red flag, right? If you don't have opportunities to grow your team as the organization grows, that's a red flag.
I would say ahead of the organization growing.
Mm-hmm.
Purple flag.
Yeah. We've got red flags and purple flags all over them. Let's just throw them out. I would also say, if you're not given access to the strategy of the organization,
red flag.
That's a red flag. Because
how do you get access? Participation in.
Mm-hmm. Sitting at that table. If you can't do that, that's a red flag.
There's no people strategy. I have to do this. This is like a big hot button for me.
Mm-hmm.
I will not build a people strategy absent a business strategy.
It's common.
Yeah.
Mm-hmm. It's an expectation that should just be a given. Mm-hmm. If I can say it any other way. You should know the business strategy. You can't create a people strategy without it. You can't. It's impossible, right? If you are sitting in an organization that does not allow you to talk to the people, because again, like I said, HR is not the same everywhere. Mm-hmm. And I have a lot of HR professionals who tell me their CEO says, you don't need to talk to the people.
Great. Look at an AI bot.
Why am I here? Interesting story. Have you ever heard Caroline Wanga's origin story?
No.
So Caroline Wanga, who is a head of Essence Ventures, was in DEI. She was in HR for over 11 years at Target. And she said at one point in time, her CEO told her, oh, you don't need to talk to the people. How do you take care of the people if you can't talk to the people? Mm-hmm. So is that a red flag, a black flag?
It's like the math ain't mathin'.
Yeah, that's like one of the biggest flags you could ever have. So I think it's important for you to recognize when you're in the organization and you're seeing all of these things, or if you're now entering an organization. And I think you raised a really good question before about at what point does employee happiness begin?
Yeah.
And I think that has changed over the years.
Yeah.
And I will say I've heard numerous conversations around it enough to say that it's changing. Previously, you would think the employee journey starts when they press the button to apply for a job, right? But now the conversation says when we tap into social media and we follow that company.
That's right. That's when it starts.
That's when it starts.
Yeah.
That's different. So now if I look at BambooHR on TikTok or Instagram and I see what life at Bamboo looks like, but I get a job at Bamboo and then life at Bamboo doesn't look that way. Red flag, purple flag, all the flags.
All the flags.
Or those companies that say, we value this, we value your we're a family. I was waiting for the rolling eyes.
We need red flag and hot button.
And how we just hit flop. That's not Julie. Red button.
Buzzer. We need a buzzer right here. Oh my gosh. I so hate to hear that. That's like a big red flag. We're all family here.
I used to say that when I was early in my career. I wanted it to be a family until I learned that was a really bad idea.
Dysfunctional family.
It was dysfunctional.
Yeah.
Dysfunctional Thanksgiving every week.
I think Simon Sinek says it well. We're a community of people who have shared beliefs and values.
Yes.
And we're trying to help an organization achieve something.
Uh-huh.
I can live with community.
Yeah.
But not family. We're a community. We don't always get along. We agree to disagree, but we're here to do a job and we're trying to get it done the best way we can.
Yeah.
I can live with that. But family,
No.
even work hard, play hard, rubs me the wrong way now.
Oh, tell me more.
Huh. Like, why do I have to play hard? Why do I have to work hard? Like,
I like this. I like this.
I just think like some of us may not like to play,
Yeah.
right?
Yeah.
But we want to work, right? And I just feel
I
like
like it.
I feel like that saying is almost for me in the we are family bucket. We work hard, we play hard, we're ambitious, and we want people to have lots of different options. So we're going to give you lots of opportunities to, be diverse in your work. That means you're going to give me more work, but not pay me equal to the work that you're giving me. That's a red flag.
Okay, you need to do a TikTok on all the manager statements and what they actually mean. That would be hilarious. Okay, and useful too, right? Manager says this, what he's actually telling you is this.
Oh yeah, we'll do that. Some corporate speak versus what the manager is really saying. So I'm like,
Decipher.
yeah.
Managerial decipher code.
But all of those things ruin our culture, right? And they are definitely called corporate red flags.
Yeah.
What are some other, I'm curious now, are there other hot, like red buttons, like buzzer buttons that you've seen, like with opportunities you've both looked at or things that you've heard?
Okay, so I'm out of corporate now. But if I ever considered going back to corporate, one of the things that I would need is a leader who has family. Like, I want to work for someone that has children, has aging parents, that gets those things. That's the kind of leader I would want to work with because I know they'd understand my dynamics and I think they'd be more human.
Yep.
Yeah. I think when you have leaders that don't have children and don't understand what it's like to navigate that kind of life, it's very disconnected unless they make the effort to get to know you as an employee and understand, especially your leadership team. Taking that time is really important. Look, if they don't have pets and they don't have kids and they don't have aging parents, it's a bit of a struggle for me because you need to understand what makes a family dynamic. That's a family, right? We're a community. And how do we create brotherhood within that community?
I love this. Actually, as we think about like examples of red flags, and one of the examples here is core values are not defined. But I think the biggest example of red flag, Julie, goes back to a point you said is that we don't know what we need. And so then we get inside these organizations and we're working for somebody who doesn't have those things, but we didn't know it was important to us until we stepped into it. And so what I encourage everyone to do, especially these HR leaders and teams of one, is you have to know what your environment needs to be successful.
Yes.
And you need to go interview for that or work to create that. Otherwise, your EMPS will drop. And I think that's just what happened. We've gotten into these organizations. It's not what it was on Instagram because nothing is.
No.
And then we're like, oh, this doesn't work. But we haven't taken the time to clearly define what matters to us for our environment.
I am so glad that you said this. So one of the things that I always encourage like HR people that I work with to do is create a persona or do some design thinking. So we go through a design thinking exercise, especially if they're not working anymore. I always challenge them to stop applying for jobs. I want you to think for a minute. What does your ideal organization look like? What does your CEO look like? Who is he? Does he have a family? Does he not have a family? What does he have? What is your CFO, your COO? What do they look like? What do they feel? What experience are you having with them? Not that you're giving them, because you already know as an HR professional what you're going to give, but what are you getting so that you could give? What does that look like? What does that ideal organization look like to you? The moment someone can define that, I tell you every time my clients find the right job, the right organization, the right position. And then I always ask them, the work that you're doing, what does it look like? Is it payroll or is it compensate? Is it recruitment? Is it performance management? Is it engagement? Is it strategy? What is it? What is it that you're doing that's giving you joy and filling your cup every day?
Yes.
When you have those difficult moments, what does that look like for you? Who are you tapping into? Who's got your back?
Yeah.
Now, when you can figure out those things, then when you go to interviews, you can ask the right questions around based on what you have created in your organization persona, your leadership persona, the people you're working with, and the work that you're doing. And then I challenge people now to think about what work looks like beyond 2024.
Yes.
Right? So I saw a really cool article from McKinsey maybe back in 2019. And it had some roles on it that I have never heard of in my entire life. So there was one that was like a recruitment, like a bias officer, just someone who picks up biases. When are your people in your leadership team showing unconscious bias to who they recruit, who they work with? Never heard of that before. Then there was a second act coach. So like, how do you help your people who are at the verge of retirement create what's coming next for them? Because it may not necessarily be exit and sit and watch the flowers grow.
Especially when they lost all their money in the economy.
Yeah. So could we create positions that help them to coach the next generation of our organization and maybe give them hybrid opportunities to develop and grow? And I'm seeing a lot of that work being done by CPOs in Australia.
Oh, interesting.
Doing some interesting things with their retirement, with people who are on the verge of retirement and bringing them back or keeping them in the space. So there's so many, HR looks different when you think of the roles that you could perform later down the road. And I'm excited for that. So design thinking, what your future looks like as an HR professional does not necessarily mean I want to be a CPO, right? But I might want to be a second act person. I might want to be a second act coach. I might want to help people transition into the virtual world and all things meta and how that looks. I might want to help people understand and how to build a good remote work plan and just focus on how do we engage the people that work with us remotely. Because if we do those things, then we build a culture that says we really do care about our people, no matter where they're at.
Yeah. I love that thing.
Yeah, because it kind of builds that learning and development piece that everybody seeks in the workplace. You hear that a lot in surveys of like, I want to be developed and help me get there. And so you have those coaches and things like that built in. Like, that's really cool.
That's awesome.
Yeah.
So what, I got lost a little bit here.
Let's help you find this.
I've got to find myself, Julie.
Find ourselves.
I think it would be, I think we talked about top red flags that we've both seen. So we've talked about that. Maybe when you're interviewing or you're considering a new opportunity, I think we've talked about that. Juicy stories, warnings you can give to our audience. Is there anything that you haven't mentioned in this?
Do you have a juicy story?
With corporate red flags? So many.
Yeah. So much juice.
So much juice.
It's a smoothie.
Where do you even begin? So I will tell you about one experience that I had in the last organization I was in before I left corporate. I had a CEO who told me, he said to me, Julie, I want you to create a modesty initiative. What? I was like, a modesty initiative? He said, yeah, we need to create a modesty initiative. And he wrote it on a board, which I took a picture of, and I still have down to this day. And he wrote all these things on the board. He said, I want the women in the office to only wear buns, not let their hair down. I don't want them to wear skirts because when they walk, they're distracting the guys. They can't wear heels. I want them to wear sneakers or loafers. And I was like, if this was not his last nail in the coffin for me to leave that place, nothing would be. Red flags all over the wazoo. And I remember telling this to one of my HR besties, and she was like, Julie, so you're going to do it? I said, no way am I going to do it. And he came back. The office was in Barbados, but he was from Canada. And he came back from Canada 3 times to try to get me to implement this modesty initiative. And I kept saying to him, listen, there's nothing wrong with the dress code policy that we have. I have no issues. I've not had to discipline anyone for any dress code issues. I will not be implementing a modesty initiative. What you're saying to me makes no sense. So the question is, what is distracting you from doing your work? Because we have so much money to make. And I think the last thing you should be thinking about is a modesty initiative. And every time he came at me 3 times, every time I said, this is not an issue. We are not doing this.
What a great example of thoughtful pushback. So how did he respond?
He came back 3 times.
But then after 3 times it died?
He left it alone.
That is a great lesson.
Just stand your ground.
Yes.
There's no way I'm creating a modesty initiative to help the women in my office. You got to wear buttons or no skirts. Who's delivering that crucial conversation?
When it's 90 degrees and you sit at Barbados, I want a bun and I'm wearing a skirt. And it would flop.
Yeah, I am not delivering that conversation. Not at all. And then I said, okay. So on the last time.
High shoes, no shirt, no problem.
You should have put that right in the door as you enter the organization.
Well, it's a good example, though, of standing your ground, because a lot of HR leaders sometimes don't feel like they're empowered to do that, to push back those 3 times. And then they run into that scenario of I'm just the person that cleans up the leader's messes.
And so let's do it anyway. No, I wasn't doing that. And then the last time he came at me, I asked him, so if I write this out, when will you deliver this message? And he said, when will I deliver the message? And I said, yeah, well, it's your message. It's your initiative. Are you going to draft it and give it to me? Or do I have to draft it? And he said, well, you draft it and then you deliver it. And I said, well, you see, no, that's the whole point. I am not doing that. And so eventually the 4th time he came back, I rubbed it off the board because I knew he wasn't coming back at me with it. And I just wiped it away.
The other thing I want to highlight for our listeners is that you use data, right? It's not like you had people pushing the dress code week after week. It wasn't a problem.
No.
And what is it that's distracting him? I think is a great question. And how does this connect to our mission, vision, values, and strategy?
Exactly.
Right?
We got work to do.
Right?
And the fact that you have me in here 3 times for 30 minutes to talk about this is a no.
Yeah.
And then that was the nail in the coffin. But then the last thing that happened was
it gets better.
He decided he wanted to hire a bunch of people, and not just any kind of people. He wanted specific talent for the organization. Talent we did not have a talent pool for. So I had to build a talent pool. We ended up hiring people who came out of jobs that were secure. And I'll tell you, when I say secure, very secure. So one of the persons we employed worked at the Central Bank of Barbados. If you work at the central bank, you're set for life. Your mortgage has no interest. You have a ton of benefits. So they had these really great benefits, and they stepped out of the organization based on how I recruited them and came to work for us. And 3 months later, he decided, after we'd hired all of this highly skilled, really important talent, that he didn't want them anymore because he couldn't see himself with these people becoming a billionaire before he was 40. And that was after that experience, I wrote my resignation. And I had to send home all of these people that he made us hire to then let them go 3 months later. And 2 weeks later, I found out that people in the organization were calling me Thanos. And it was the most heartbreaking thing for me because I think I tried so hard. And it was the most difficult experience I'd ever gone through. But I wrote my resignation solid that I was going to resign in December. And in October, just as we were navigating the pandemic and we had this big argument about getting staff home, they made me redundant. And I was like, that is God working in my behalf. And I started HR at Heart, and I never looked back because I just think so many red flags in our organizations. If we're sitting with these kind of leaders who, mind you, had kids, had a family, and still made those kind of decisions around people who have families. I was devastated, and that just completely, that made me go, okay, I didn't want another corporate job as long as I live. But yeah, that's too juicy.
That's really juicy. That was worth the squeeze for sure.
I got those lemons. So that's our
But I do always say to our peers, you have to be able to sleep at night in this job.
Yep.
And if you have leaders that are forcing you to do things that are out of alignment with your core values, that's when it's up to you to take a step back and decide, can I sleep at night if I do these things?
Exactly. And if you can't, and at that point, my burnout was so bad.
I bet.
I had insomnia for months. And even after coming out of my burnout, I still had insomnia 2 years later. I still couldn't sleep past 2 a.m.
It was PTSD. I mean, that's literally what it is.
Yep.
Post-traumatic stress disorder.
Yep.
Absolutely.
Absolutely. And it was just the most difficult experience I'd ever had. I struggled to come out of bed. It was the most awful experience you could ever have. And I said, no, corporate HR, I'm not built for it. That's when again, the lessons of knowing yourself and knowing what you want. And I just know that I love people. I love the work I do. But unless I have the right environment and situation and circumstances, that model that I have designed for myself is firmly etched in my brain. And I haven't seen anyone come close to what is here. So I'm just going to stay on the outskirts and do the work that I'm loving right now.
Well, and you can set your own boundaries.
Exactly.
Right? What you will and you won't do.
Correct.
And that's amazing.
Yes.
Yep. But I still think we have to give hope to the people inside corporate America, right? Because Julie is a master of setting boundaries inside. So you don't have to be outside to set your boundaries.
No.
You just have to be able to stand your ground effectively and know that you're willing enough for the consequences that may take place.
Exactly. And I'd say if you are gun-ho and you believe it,
yes,
I always say, is this the hill you want to die on today?
That's true.
Because if that's the hill, then go for it.
Yeah.
But if you don't think that this is the hill you want to die on, then let's keep it moving.
Well, and that's why you have to know what you want, because then you know what you're going to die for. If you don't know what you want, what you stand for, then oftentimes I've seen, especially more entry-level HR teams, they want to die on every hill.
Yeah.
And then you use up all of your influence capital, and you don't want to do that either.
No, definitely don't. That's really great advice.
Well, what red flags have you seen in your career or other careers that have severely impacted company culture? And with this, I'm wondering specifically about the happiness of employees.
You know, I worked in for better or worse, being super candid, I've worked for Silicon Valley CEOs and I've worked for Utah-based CEOs. And because of our really strong influence of religion here in Utah, we don't work on Sundays for the most part unless something really is happening. And I've come to appreciate that. Where I know if I work for most of the Silicon Valley CEOs I've had experience with, you're working 24/7. And so there's always a trade-off with what you have in mind, and you just need to be aware of what those trade-offs are.
Yeah.
When I have worked with some Silicon Valley CEOs, I think one of the things is overreach and lack of ability to give up and give control away. I think great CEOs know how to give things away and elevate themselves as the business grows. Mm-hmm. When I have somebody that's all up in my stuff all of the time and doesn't allow me to make decisions and do what I think I was hired to do, that makes it really tough for me. Yeah. That's hard to interview for. But in that situation, I packaged myself out after 8 weeks. I was like, this isn't what I'm going to do. It doesn't line up with who I want to be, with the kind of leader that I want to be. And so I think those are the things that you have to be aware of. Like if you get into something that you didn't know and you couldn't see it through the interview process, get yourself out.
Yes, absolutely. Mm-hmm. I like that piece around not being able to do what you're hired to do.
Yes.
I think that's a huge red flag. Yeah. You bring me in to do one thing, but then you want to tell me how to do it, or you want to micromanage me through it. Like, I'm not going to do that.
Yeah.
But again, it ties back to knowing what you will stand for and being able to stand your ground and go, okay, no, I'm not going to do this. And am I willing to resign as a result of this? Absolutely. And keep it moving. Yeah.
Yeah.
Mm-hmm. Yeah. Is there anything that you've seen or heard directly that impacts employee happiness as well?
So in Barbados, we have an aging population. And people's inability to be able to take care of their aging parents in a very meaningful way is very important. So one of the challenges that we've seen is people leaving their aging parents at the hospital and not coming back for them, and then end up in the geriatric system.
Oh.
Yeah. So not giving people the opportunity to take their parents for a doctor's visit, not being able to take their parents to a hospital to get help or to stay with their parents while they're getting support or the medical attention that they need is very challenging. And so I think being able to recognize what the family unit is and the support that people need in order to take care of their family, whatever that looks like for people, is something that I'm finding more and more people are expressing their frustration around, not being happy, knowing that they have aging parents who may have dementia. They walk away from home, then they have to go look for them. Oh. You can't do that and work and still have managers go, well, you didn't meet this deadline and so we're going to fire you. That definitely creates a lot of anxiety and a lot of frustration and a lot of unhappiness. Mm-hmm. And so that's one thing that I'm hearing a lot of conversation about in our own country, in Barbados. If I think about outside of that, I think around the family dynamic in general, people knowing that they have good childcare or they have good health care is always going to be, that's top of mind for a lot of people, but also knowing that they can have enough money to be okay. Like everyone doesn't want to be rich, but people just want to be okay.
That's right.
People don't just want to live paycheck to paycheck. And so how can we change that? I think is a really important discussion around our benefits and how we support people and how we introduce bonus schemes and different things like that. I think is going to become crucial to have those conversations.
It's really important in those situations too, because oftentimes, we hear it falling back on the workplace. The workplace isn't supporting me. And in those situations that I've dealt with personally and also with people on my team, it's because no one knows what they can count on. So when I'm going through those situations in hardship, I have aging parents, I have young kids, all of those things, I'm very explicit with my top customers around, this is when I'm traveling. This is when I'm not. This is when I'll get that report to you. This is when I won't. Mm-hmm. So that everybody knows how it's organized. Yeah. If you have to pull away to focus on personal things, that's great. But let people know where you are and what they can get from you and what the backup plan is.
Yes.
And I think that's where we can gain strength and leadership and also for individuals going through these hard times.
Yeah. Mm-hmm. But don't be dismissive.
Correct.
Which is why I have experience, which is the dismissiveness to, oh, well, if you can't be here, no bueno.
Yeah.
and no opportunity to just take care of your parents. So then what do? You abandon your parents because you need money to take care of your parents. And you don't want that. So
Well, we just had this situation with the horrific hurricanes in North Carolina and Florida here in the U.S. And so we implemented PTO or time off for people affected by natural disasters. A lot of them couldn't get internet. They couldn't get water. And it was like, just take your time off. Don't focus on work. Focus on your own well-being.
Yeah.
And that felt really, really good. I'm glad we did
that's
it before
beautiful.
this happened, because we had people saying, well, can you get me Starlink? Can you get me temporary internet? And I remember going back and saying, I really just want you to focus on what you need to survive right now. I don't want you to focus on work. Now, I get it. Sometimes people in hardship want to focus on work.
Yeah.
And they need that. And so those are kind of tough lines to draw of like, let's just get you set up where we can get you set up. Because if you're serving customers and things like that, it has to be reliable and dependable. It's tough for people on all sides.
Yes, it is. It is.
When we kind of spoke about this earlier a little bit, when individuals need to look for, company culture red flags, as they're looking at companies, you kind of talked about asking the right questions and trying to understand. You kind of alluded to this in your most recent comment about like, what does flexibility look like? What does scheduling look like? And making sure you're setting the right expectations and boundaries right up front so that you understand what is expected. I think is important. But is there any other red flags or things that listeners can do to learn about the red flags that hasn't been mentioned?
I would just say keep the conversation going. I think at the end of the day, happiness at work is not a destination. It's not like one day you're going to be like, I'm happy at work. But I think it's a journey. And so just remembering that.
It is a journey. It is a journey, and you own your journey, right? You don't have to be subservient to the current place. Take your time, find a place that works for you, and move towards it.
Yeah, absolutely.
Yeah. Well, I can't believe it. We're almost at time. Are there any closing thoughts? I know, Vanessa or Julie, that you have for our audience on this topic.
Let's get Vanessa first.
Oh man, no, I really love, I think my favorite part of this was the red button buzzer, juicy topics. It just makes me think back to when I was in early career and didn't feel that empowerment of walking away or feeling like I could say no, or realizing the environment I was in was not a great environment. I had a CEO come to me and say, hey, I want you to sew up the rug in the front, and it's got like a rubber bottom. And I was like, you do realize you need like an industrial machine for that? He's like, I don't know what that is. You're a woman. Don't you have the equipment at home? And then a few weeks later,
still alive?
Yes.
Just checking.
And a few weeks later, he said, I don't want to develop you in your career because you're going to get married, have children, and quit anyway. So it was like, but in those moments, I look back and I think about younger Vanessa and think, I wish I could have given myself advice during that time to say, you can walk away.
Yeah.
And I should have seen the red flags from the beginning, but I didn't know what to look for. And so it's kind of sometimes these experiences help you kind of create that checklist of what am I truly looking for? What am I going to thrive in? And what am I going to be passionate about? And that's what creates, your day to day and how your happiness levels and things like that. And I mean, there's a reason I've been at Bamboo for 8 years, but I think that that's important to learn those things, create that checklist. But just kind of, those are my final thoughts.
Oh, wow.
That's juicy too.
Very. She just dropped like a whole.
She's got lemons too.
Just left it on the table.
Where's my mini mic? I started.
Wow. I want to say, I think that I wish we lived in this era like before, like if I could come forward in time and be like here right now, because I feel like this is the time where we have the most knowledge and information. This podcast is going to help so many people. And I also think that good or bad, we can learn a lot from listening to other stories. And I think it's great that people are opening up and sharing their stories. I'm seeing a lot of this happening, especially on TikTok. I see a lot of people sharing their stories and their experiences of corporate red flags that they've experienced personally. Some of them so heartbreaking. It hurts me to actually be in a time where I can sit in my home and watch someone get fired.
Yeah.
I think that's terrible.
Yeah.
But this is the time that we're in, and so much information. And I just think you need to know where to grab it from. But just know that you have the power. You don't have to settle. And even if the job that you're looking for isn't here right now, you have options. Like now you can build books on Canva and sell them on Amazon and make a profit for yourself, right? You have lots of different ways that you could try to build a business for yourself until you find the job that meets your needs. But I think the same way you wouldn't want to settle in a relationship and find out that you married someone that you weren't compatible with, treat your job the same way and recognize that this is the place where you're going to hang up boots for a little while, even if it's 3 to 5 years. It's somewhere you're going to hang up your boots for a while. And you need to make really good choices about how you go about doing that. And so recognizing and listening to other stories about those red flags, but knowing yourself, knowing your values and knowing what you want out of this entire experience that you're going to call a career is important.
Well, thank you, Julie. Thank you, Vanessa. I'm so grateful for your words of wisdom, for everything that you're sharing with our audience. Like you said, this is timeless advice. It's things that we've struggled with for all time. And if we could all go back to our younger selves and give us this advice, we would. So please reach out to any of us anytime. We're here to support you and the work that you're doing. We're so grateful for the wonderful work that you're doing out there. And we want to thank you for joining us today on today's episode. We invite you to visit us at hrunplugged.com, where you can sign up and subscribe to future episodes by subscribing to our series. And you can view all of our episodes in your favorite podcast format. Thank you again to both of you. Have a lovely day. Thanks for being with us.
Thanks for joining us for HR Unplugged. This series is brought to you by BambooHR. Visit us at bamboohr.com/HR-unplugged for video versions of the podcast, additional resources, and to learn more about how BambooHR sets people free to do great work.